Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under, back fresh from the international break. And with me, I've got Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Good to be sort of back, sort of, I don't know, to form, or maybe it was something, I don't know, back winning games. We've managed to, I don't know, keep the wheels on before they fell off or something. I don't know what metaphor to use here, but it was it was nice to, I don't know, to get the win over Wednesday for sure.
Yeah, I was saying to someone the other week, when it comes to these games against Sheffield Wednesday, as much as they're meant to be sort of a gimme 3 points and you bank it before the game and all the rest of it, in some ways that actually makes me feel more pressured coming into these games, because you're just like, you can't drop points. And I happened to watch this one on replay and was kind of trying to skip ahead to the start of the game and skip too far to the point where the score was 1-1. And I think in a way that was actually very good, because then I went back to the start, but it meant that when Wednesday scored, I was like, not going to get too upset by this. It was a nice sort of emotional hedge. But yeah, I imagine watching live going 1-0 down would have been a bit of a frustrating feeling.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. I felt like the first part of the game was reasonably even. It didn't like it wasn't that they dominated or whatever. They got a free kick or free kick or
Yeah,
corner. I
yeah.
don't know,
Corner, maybe?
corner maybe. And then like it's just one of we've actually copped a few of these sorts of goals this year where we have just sort of we just can't seem to clear it away properly. We don't clear our lines very well, and they get us. Someone they just happen to get a scrappy sort of goal by being able to poke it away from 8 yards out or something. I don't think there's much blame you can put on Panda for that. I think it falls at McBurney's feet, or like at one point, and he just is struggling to get it out and be able to kick it away. And it was just a messy one. I don't even know if there's anything like particular where you pinpoint where the error was. It was just a bit of it was just a messy one.
Yeah,
And it didn't
like
really reflect the game that much. But
yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it just feels like we've had so many of these, which is so weird because, as you say, like, it's not really anyone's fault. It's just, we just seem to really struggle to put a foot through it and get it clear of the box. I don't know. And then even then, like you say, there's probably even been a few goals where we have cleared it really effectively up the field. Like I'm thinking of the Lundstrom clearance against someone, I can't think of who right now, where it then just came back with interest and they scored from the second phase of the play. And I was like, it just seems like we don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, we just can't seem to deal with these.
yeah, I don't really know either. I'm wondering, like, maybe it's because we're obviously trying to play good, quote unquote, good football, where we're trying to keep possession, we're trying to, play it up the field, and we're not just sort of kicking and chasing. That, maybe there is a bit of resistance, but also, like, our number 9, McBurney's back in the box defending those corners. So the flip side is you look up and you go, well, where do you actually kick it to? Like, because as you say, if you just kick it away, it's going to come straight back anyway. So I think they're kind of hoping that when they win it, that one of the wingers or the midfielders is going to sort of charge forward, and then they can sort of play and try and get the counter going. But I guess it doesn't really ever fall or set enough for anyone to do that in that instance. I guess the positive is that pretty much off the kickoff, we just went up and scored. Scored straight away. Great. A little bit. I think it's one pass in there. It's a little bit lucky, but some great direct, aggressive play, playing it, between the lines and through, and then, like, I think a great ball in from Joseph, with Crooks just sort of tapping it home. But I guess like that, it's that we've talked about it so often this season, how it seems like sometimes we don't start playing until we go a goal behind, and I think this one especially, like, there've been some decent chances, but I think then once we went behind, I think it just our intensity ramped up a lot more, and we scored a goal, and then a few minutes later we have Miller putting it across the box, and McBurney misses it by like a toenail or whatever, like, just slides in and just misses it. And we get the free kick that McBurney he's there, he jumps, puts the pressure, and then they cop the own goal. It just seemed we were going okay, but then as we concede, and then that's when we really seem to ramp it up. And obviously, it's not the best sort of game plan as we get to some crunch games, and if you're talking playoffs and things like that, you don't want to be giving any team a goal advantage in the playoffs, because obviously it's going to be down to 4 of the best 6 teams in the division, and we've already seen that the likes of Ipswich, Millwall, can be pretty miserly in their defense. Like they're pretty tight, but they're not going to give away a heap of goals. So if you give them one, it might be pretty hard to sort of to claw that back. So I think it's definitely something we need to I guess in this last handful of games really address. Get just scoring first and getting on the front foot, going back to the basics, get a couple of clean sheets, get some wins.
Yeah. And I think at least I would say it's relative positive that we don't drop our heads too often when we go behind. Like the West Brom game's probably the only one that really springs to mind recently. Maybe you throw the QPR game in, that's a little bit further back now, where we really dropped our heads after conceding. Like even the Millwall game where we lose 3-1, like we were still pressing them, still a dominant team in that game. So you like to think at least if we were to go behind in the playoffs, assuming that we make it, that that we're actually still in with the fight. Like we're not going to drop our heads and give up on the game. But I think definitely, as you say, after that goal, like the Crooks goal goes in, the pressure really keeps ramping up. The goal just before halftime as well, I think, meaning that we went in leading the game. I think really, whilst it took a bit of the nerves away for us, I think it really kind of killed the game off for Sheff Wednesday to an extent, because I think that second half was a very light affair in that sense. Like I think we had a number of chances. McBurney had a great one-on-one with Charles, tees up Joseph for that a really classy goal. And I think, I reckon if we watch back Joseph's goal compilation this season, I'm sure there's a couple that are sort of bundled in off, double deflections and things like that. But there's also quite a few that are, starting to stand out as really classy finishes for him. So I think he's really coming on leaps and bounds this season, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the Gelhardt offside that was pretty late in the game as well. I guess the big thing is Slater's injury. That's probably the big one that is going to have some sort of ramifications.
Yeah, I mean, it's sounding as if from the report that he is essentially out until the playoff campaign, should it materialise. It sounded as if there was hope that he'd be fit after the international break, but scans weren't quite so positive. I guess you could say on the flip side from an injury front that it's sounding as if, and I guess I'm a little bit skeptical of how realistic it is, but it's sounding as if Giles, JB, Coyle and Jacob could all be fit for this coming game against Oxford. So, I mean, we sort of joked about it on the last episode that, it comes in sort of peaks and troughs for us on the injury front, where just as soon as we're getting everyone back fit, there's got to be a long-term injury to counterbalance it. And sure enough, that's materialized with Slater. But, you sort of fingers crossed, like we've kind of got through the international break relatively unscathed from, your Kumas and your Hadjimetovic and those guys all going, Egan and so on, all going off on international duty. Doesn't sound as if there's been any issues on that front, which is good. But yeah, Slater, I think, is a huge loss because of his versatility and his availability so far this season.
Yeah, I think, in some case, it might actually be really good for us that he's got injured right now in terms of, maybe chasing away some potential suitors come the off season. Maybe, if a bit of a longer injury might give them reason to pause and reconsider. The other one I've seen that was interesting, or the news I've seen, was about Hirakawa, who was supposed to have surgery and then has opted not to, and he's aiming for a natural recovery. I think he's obviously thinking more towards the World Cup, but I wonder where that puts him timeline wise. Say we do make the playoffs, whether he's around then or not? Because how long has he been out already? A month or something?
It must be, yeah. And there is talk, I think, because he's really focused on getting fit for the World Cup, that there is an outside chance he'd be fit for the playoffs. I mean, you'd like to think if Balumi stays fit and Miller stay fit, and you've got your Joseph and you've got Gelhardt, you've already got quite a few, and your Kumas and so on. You do already have quite a few wide options, so I wouldn't want to rush him back for the sake of it. And the other one's Matazo. I think Matazo's also. I mean, the club seems to be saying get him right, get him fit for pre-season, but I think he hasn't ruled out. And I think there is an extent to which you say it's probably actually good for his mental health, even if he gets sort of 5-10 minutes off the bench against Norwich last game of the season, to give him that tangible link back in. Like, he's already been on the bench for the similar sort of reasons, but give him that link back into the first team.
Yeah, I think especially like if the season, whatever that event, the end of that looks like, if it's sort of locked up and where the game's, whatever the state of the game is, it's pretty safe and all of that, then I think you're absolutely right. If he's sort of around and available, then it would be obviously just like a nice thing to do, because he's suffered just a horrendous time since he has come to the club. Like, what was it? He played 3 games or something, maybe?
So, yeah, it must be only about 3 or 4 games, because he got injured against Cardiff, I want to say, back in February.
Yeah, it was like, he hadn't played much at all. He came in January and then
scored against Stoke, and then did his ACL against Cardiff. Yeah,
and then like comes back, gets a few games in the 21s or under 23s, and then like he's warming up for one of the and then tears his quad or something, and like instead, and you're like, what the? Or like gets a quad, like another injury, I suppose. But I mean, is he? I mean, he's just probably, I guess, as unlucky as Miller and Balumi both were. Like, come back from the ACL and then do something else. But I don't know. I think if they're, I mean, just if he's fit and the opportunity's there, then I think it would be, you're right, great for his mental state, and great for like just that sort of giving back. He's suffered for the club and suffered a lot and done a lot of, obviously, physio and rehab and all of that, and done lots of stuff isolated and separated from the team. So it'd be really good to give him that moment where he's back sort of amongst it in front of some fans and everything. But look, I guess, like, back to the game, the Wednesday game, I think you touched on him before, that like Joseph, I thought like he was I think outstanding, and it just goes to show, like, in those games that we already talked about last time, I think there was the month's worth of games before where he wasn't getting picked, like, and as soon as he comes back in, there's impact, and his goals and assists and everything. So I think I'm just going to jump in and tell you that I gave him my 3 points. And just because I just thought, like, the goal, the assist, and his and I guess, like, his part in the build up to that assist as well. Obviously, the goal that he got, and just his general all around press and everything was sensational. So I gave him 3. I gave 2 to McBurney, who I thought, apart from sort of stumbling around in the box and not being able to clear that first one, I think you touched on the assist. There's the pressure on the box. There's the near misses. I think he had a really strong game himself. It was unlucky probably not to get a goal for himself truly, because that second one is an own goal to Dominic Orfer, I think. And then I gave 1 to Crooks for, I think he was real busy in the midfield, and especially getting up and getting that first goal was really good. But I think those 3 stood out for me. But I think everyone, like, there was lots of players who I definitely could have. I could have taken a half dozen and put them in place of Crooks.
Yeah, and I think it's highlighted. I had a couple of different players there for my votes. I definitely had Joseph for man of the match. I thought he was terrific. I had Panda with the 2 votes. I thought he made a couple of good saves and was looking really assured in goal for us. And then Lundstrom for 1 vote, coming off the bench for Slater and looking really controlled in that midfield role, which was good, because it's going to be interesting to see how we handle that, whether it's someone like a Collier comes in for Slater or whether we try to use a Lundstrom, because I think with Lundstrom, it's interesting. He doesn't necessarily have the legs for 90 minutes, and so he's almost a better option off the bench. And granted, he played, 70 minutes with the Slater injury, but it'll be interesting to see how he sort of handled that shape in midfield as a result. But yeah, I think lots of players could have got votes in this game, so it was a great performance from that perspective. All right. Well, and I guess the other thing to note is, so still 3 points ahead of Southampton and Wrexham. We are getting to that point of the season where I will, once we've talked Oxford and Coventry, I'll flash up the table just to have a look at just how tight it is. I think the interesting thing I would say about the state of the table that is probably a bit deceptive for people is you can look at it as Southampton, Wrexham, Derby, all within touching distance of us. And, if we go out and drop points to Oxford or whatever, what I would say is Southampton, first of all, don't play on Good Friday because I think they've got an FA Cup game on the Saturday. So their game with Ipswich is postponed. But even when they do play, I think their next 2 games are against Wrexham and Derby. So you sort of think, I don't know, like at least one of those sides has to be dropping points in those games. And even if you were to assume that Southampton wins both of those, well, that just means that Wrexham and Derby are both staying on 63 and 60 points respectively. So you go, there is a world where those sides are dropping points, and therefore that's going to benefit us no matter what. And you've also got the fact that Middlesbrough are playing Millwall on Good Friday, so you've actually got the sides above us also, potentially dropping points. And that's all to say, this Oxford game then becomes a really big opportunity if we were to put those 3 points on the board to not only really start to cement a place in the top 6 from that chasing pack, but also means that, I think if Millwall was to beat Middlesbrough, they'd be on 72, Borough would be on 71. If we win this game, we'd be on 69. So we'd only be, 2 points behind Middlesbrough, 3 points behind Millwall. If that was to happen, if Middlesbrough win, obviously that's a bit murkier for us, but then it would mean that we're suddenly level on points with Millwall. So I think, all of that's to say, I think 3 points against Oxford would be absolutely massive, has to be the focus. And if we do that, then no matter what happens elsewhere, it's a really positive outcome for us.
Yeah, I think that sort of the top 6 or top sort of 8 are the only ones that can sort of feasibly sort of make a realistic push given all the different fixtures. But it is very tight, and that sort of works in some way, like it works kind of for and against us. If we drop points, then obviously it can be pretty scary. We shift quick. But as you say, the flip side is if we win our games or target the games that we need to win and win those games, then like it's just essentially kind of just about anything still really possible from second to even out. It's like second to finishing outside of the playoffs are all still viable options. And in after the Good Friday game, that could be the conversation is going to be all completely different again, probably. But at the moment, like anything could happen, and I guess that's the most exciting part about right now. It's the prospect of continuing to kind of poor form of late and dropping points against teams we should be beating is terrifying. But the flip side, as you say, it's like the excitement of like if we win, we can be 2 or 3 points behind second, and then suddenly what a week ago seemed like a pipe dream again, or a foregone conclusion that maybe the automatics aren't necessarily out of it. And so that's the for me that's the most exciting part about kind of right now is that every game, every game always matters, but every game really has, I guess, really big implications when we're running out of games to play.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I'll bring the table up now because I think it is worth looking at, as you say. And that's the thing is we're at that point of the season now where we've got 7 games left to play. Every single game now is starting to get to a point where it's going to have huge ramifications, and it'll chop and change for the remainder of the season. So nothing's set in stone to that extent. Teams will drop points where you don't expect them to. They'll pick up wins where you don't expect them to as well. I think what's going in our favour is, other than the Coventry fixture, which we have on Easter Monday, it's a relatively kind run of fixtures to finish the season. We've got Norwich, we've got Birmingham, we've got Sheff United is probably the trickiest games, and Charlton down there, with Leicester as well. As I think that's all the fixtures that we have left. So you sort of would want to think that compared to some of the other teams, like as I touched on with Southampton having Wrexham and Derby, Middlesbrough playing Ipswich and Millwall as well. So there's a lot of tricky fixtures for sides around us. And you'd like to think, I mean, even looking ahead to the Coventry game on Monday, if Coventry were to win their game on Good Friday, take them to 83 points, and if Middlesbrough were to drop points on that a Good Friday game, I don't know if that is worse for us or better. Like, does it make it worse for us that Coventry might be incentivized to come, play against us on the Monday and say a win gives us the title? Or is it starting to get to a point when they're, potentially sort of 12 or 11 points ahead of Middlesbrough, where they go, we've got it won, and almost start to take their foot off the gas a little bit? Like, it's going to be a really interesting one in terms of how that Coventry mentality starts to either work for us or against us for that game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we've already seen like that Coventry, they had that, they started the season so well, and then they had a big period in the middle of the season where they really sort of were struggling, really got brought back to the chasing pack, and they've sort of found their early season form again lately, and they're sort of stretching that gap at the top again. But I think at the beginning of the season we were thinking they were going to be, they were going to be record breakers. They're going to be 100-point seasoners, and I think they might be able to just break 100 points if they win every game.
100, yeah, just over.
But yeah, I don't think they've quite captured the I don't know what, or quite met what the expectations were. I think after about 10 or 11 games of the season. But I think out of these two games between Oxford and Coventry, I think 3 is the minimum. I think we have to beat Oxford. But I think 4 is a reasonable sort of like barometer. Like, I think if we get a point out of Coventry again, then I think that would be like a really good return out of these two games. Obviously, if we beat them, that'd be sensational. But I think if you can get anything out of that second game against the league leaders, and as you say, team probably potentially looking to lock up, first place and lock up the championship, then I think if you can take a point, then that would be a pretty good performance.
Yeah, I agree. I think, even if it's just the 3 points, if that 3 points is against Oxford, I'm pretty happy with that. I guess actually in this situation, it doesn't really matter who the 3 points comes against, but I think 3 at a minimum would do me, if nothing else, because that would mean that we're kind of keeping that gap with one of Wrexham or Southampton, because they can't both, like, they're playing each other. They can't beat it, on that Monday game. Actually, I don't know who Wrexham have on the Friday game, so I guess they could also feasibly overtake us. But anyway, like, they can't both overtake us over the next 2 weeks, next 2 games. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Obviously, 0-0 draw with Coventry way back on the first day of the season between two of the highest scoring sides in the division was maybe not a good predictor for how the season was going to pan out.
Wrexham has West Brom, by the way, on that Saturday.
Yeah, okay. It's an interesting one, actually, because West Brom are starting to play
a bit of a resurgence.
They're probably an interesting.
Well, they're two in their last 5. They're 2 draws and 2 wins. So.
Yeah. So that'll certainly be interesting. And it'll be interesting with the Coventry game because I find that probably Ipswich's side, like a lot of those possession-heavy sides, are actually sides we tend to do well against. Like, it's kind of crazy to think that we've done the double over Southampton, who are this crazy form team of the division at the moment, but we're the last side that beat them, and did so, I thought, relatively comfortably. Handled Wrexham really well as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that Coventry game pans out. But I think if we get the 3 points against Oxford, it just takes so much pressure off for that game, which then potentially plays into our favour as well. If we're getting guys like Giles back fit as well, you're starting to get a semblance of your best 11 back. You'd like to think as well that Balumi would be pretty close to starting games as well. In either of these, I probably wouldn't say both.
Yeah, definitely. I could see him starting, maybe getting the same sort of 10 or 15 minutes off the bench in Oxford against Oxford, and then starting against Coventry, or sort of vice versa, starting one playing 60 minutes or something, and then getting a 10 or 15-minute cameo in the other one. I think I think with the little bit of stuff he'd done, and then a couple of weeks break, or the international break, and a bit of more training and more running and more everything, that I could see something like that. I think you're definitely with Giles and some of those other players potentially sort of coming back into the fold. I think that only can only really be good for us as long as he's properly back. But either Giles or Jacob, I think would be sensational to have, just to have a left back again.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be great, because I think both of them have played when either of them have played, they've both played really, really well for us this season. So I think they especially like Giles, obviously, especially offers us such a good attacking threat. With the crosses from a bit deeper, or overlapping Miller and working that left hand side. So I'd be over the moon to see one of those back, even if it was for only like for the Coventry game, not even necessarily for the Oxford. Because again, like you couldn't see Giles coming back and playing 2 90-minute games in 3 days or 4 days. So
especially when since he'd already re-aggravated that hamstring once this season, you'd really want to be careful with him.
Yeah, so especially the managing the return from that injury, but if they're back, I think that just adds, I guess, it's just another string to our bow, and back to sort of a semblance of the squad that was so, I guess performing so well earlier in the season.
Yeah, other shout out is both these games are televised here in Australia on beIN Sport. So the Oxford game is 1 a.m. Saturday morning, but is on beIN Sport. So that gives us a good opportunity to sleep in on, was it Easter Saturday? Good Saturday, Easter Saturday. And then likewise with the Coventry game. And then and then the Coventry game is, I think, similar. No, actually, I take that back. I think 5 a.m. on the Tuesday. So my first day back to work, and then that's also on beIN Sports, so that's good. And then clocks are changing over the Easter break, so we'll be back to the midnight and 9 p.m. games, which would be nice to round out the season. So it'll be a good run into the end of the season. We've kind of survived the 2 a.m. wake ups or stay ups for another season, which is nice. Any final thoughts on the lineups? I mean, I think the main one that we've touched on, and I'm constantly concerned about, is that for whatever reason, it feels like as soon as we get better options available, Jurkiewicz is happy to drop Joseph to the bench, and we can coincidentally put in much poorer performances. And I'm really hoping that the penny drops before the playoffs, that maybe dropping Joseph isn't such a good idea. But I'd love to see. To be honest, if someone was to be dropped, as much as he's been quite prolific this season, I'd actually say maybe drop Gelhardt to the bench for a spell if you wanted to get, say, Balumi and Joseph on the wings.
Yeah, I think probably if I had to drop someone from the games on the weekend, it would be Miller or Gelhardt. I think would be the ones who I think could make way. As much as I think Miller's doing a lot of really good things, but he kind of feels like it's just not quite clicking for him. He's not quite getting the assists that they're all so close, but just not quite happening for him. And he's playing well, but not really contributing on those key statistics. So I could see him making way, and then either Joseph switching to the left, or even just playing Balumi on the left or something. But I think either of those are the two. I think you're right. I just don't think you can drop at this point in the season. If a player's in form and they're making meaningful contributions, then you just have to get them on the field as much as possible. At the moment, of the current sort of forward line, it's McBurney and Joseph who seem to be contributing in that area, and even Joseph more so than McBurney.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I mean, you look at McBurney's, I think 1 goal in 8, and granted, like he's still getting the assist, which is really good, and he's still got the general play. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't really been spoken about all that much, but he's on a little bit of a dry run in terms of scoring goals, which is a bit interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, I think, I guess, like, besides that option here, or like that position, the other one is like what, yeah, as you sort of touched on before, what happens for that, the other pivot where Slater would have gone, and you know, you're pretty much thinking that it'll be like, it kind of feels like Amir or Lundstrom will sort of fit into one of those, and then Crooks takes probably one spot.
Very slow.
Yeah, and then so maybe it is Collier, or maybe this is you know, McCarthy's time for a run in the middle. He's young, he's got legs. He played in there at one point early in the season. I think he maybe started in the backs and then moved into the middle later in the game, in one of those early season sort of appearances. But I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with giving him a go. And worst case, if it doesn't quite work out and he's lost, well, then maybe you just have to make an early sub and throw Lundstrom, you know, or one of those other heads in there, and you go, it's like, don't worry about it, mate. Like, we'll try again like another day or whatever. But I'd feel comfortable him. I mean, you'd like to think Collier has more to offer. I just haven't, like, we've barely seen anything from him, because he came injured, got fit, played, had one appearance, got injured again. So I just don't know, like, whether I trust him from the start. Although in saying that I'm willing to throw McCarthy on and have a bad game and sub him off, but I'm not willing to risk playing Collier and him getting injured and having to get subbed off. So I don't know, that doesn't make any sense.
And we've also got potentially JB coming back to fitness as well, it sounds like. So he's sort of the forgotten man in all of this as well. Yeah. Quick roundup of score predictions for these two games, and we'll jump off.
2-0 and a 1-1.
Nice. Yeah, I think look, I'll even just a 1-0 against Oxford, scrappy 1-0, I'll take that. And yeah, like a 1-1 with Coventry would be nice. I can see them edging it. I think probably a 2-1 Coventry is the realistic scoreline. I think they'll be really gunning to lock off and secure that promotion. So I think that game will be a bit tricky. I actually had hoped that it was a couple of games later, and you might have copped them with hangovers after celebrating the title, but wasn't to be. But yeah, look, I think 3 points from these two games would be a great return and really set us up for the final 5 games of the season. It's coming up very quickly. So thank you for joining me for this one.
No worries.
And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back next week to review the Oxford and Coventry games and look ahead to that final 5 games of the season, as there's everything left to play for. Hopefully a playoff place secured and a push for that top 2 spot. But until then, come on City.